WrestleZone.com, WrestleZone, daily, nightly, whatever you want to call it, coming to you on the WrestleZone Radio podcast feed, wherever you are. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube or Facebook. I am Kevin Kellum. Joining me, not just one, but two big minds from WrestleZone.com. The news desk has been busy, and it has been sad today. And one of the biggest wrestling stories of the year, a year that has already been sad around the world with the coronavirus. WWE announced today at noon Eastern that they would make a bunch of different financial changes in the company amid the coronavirus outbreak. The company losing millions not running WrestleMania live, and expected to lose millions more not running the profitable events in Saudi Arabia, as well as live events all around the world. And there's a real question mark on when WWE can get back on the road and really run as the WWE know it. And wrestling in general is in that position now with the global COVID-19 outbreak. Then the cuts came, and they were deep. This is the single biggest layoff of WWE on-screen and off-screen talent in a single day since this news has been publicly available for the past few decades. WWE announced several cuts, and they are big. Joining me is Dominic D'Angelo and Robert DeFilis. We will cover NXT and AEW tonight, but obviously, in terms of the wrestling world, this is the story. This is the story that we need to follow, and the story we know that you're going to want to talk about. Guys, this is just a bummer of a day, and I know there's bigger stories in the world besides wrestling. We have thousands of people that have lost their lives to this, and millions more lives affected. But eventually, this was going to come to wrestling's doorstep, and today it came in and kicked it down.
You know, I don't like that we have sat through a week of wrestling going from it's going to continue on as a taped product to it's essential. And we throughout the entirety of this virus, whether ironically or serious, we're going to use the word essential quite often. We just found out that WWE became essential in the state of Florida, deemed by Governor Rick DeSantis. And, you know, there's immediately speculation came. I saw the real news media outlets, not just us, but the CNNs, the MSNBCs, picking up, hey, why is WWE running still? Then you get the news about the Super PAC with Linda McMahon and how they pledged to spend millions of dollars in the state of Florida. And you go, okay, I'm connecting the dots here. And days after being deemed essential, you cut 20-plus names from your roster. That's not even including coaches, producers, writers. You cut 20 in-ring talents, some of whom were on the very shows that you ran on Monday. This is not a good look for the company. And yes, there is the obvious, everybody's going to have to make cuts. We get that. I get that. I'm not trying to sit here and bastardize the Empire. I'm not doing that. But you cannot sit here and say that No Way Jose making the trek on Monday was essential, and now we're going to send you home on Wednesday. That is bullshit, and you know it. Dom, you want to chime in here?
I mean, I tend to lean with Robert on a lot of that. It's just like the fact that that's a lot of cuts, number one, out of the blue, when you have a lot of those talents either just on a show that you promoted, the club. You have the club on WrestleMania. You have Drake Maverick and Lio Rush booked for the NXT Cruiserweight tournament, and all of a sudden they're just gone. This is the end of them. It's like it's all Vince McMahon's way to meet the minds of Wall Street and keep a certain profit margin above it. It's like it takes away. I understand it's a business and it's what you gotta like. That's the mindset of McMahon in general. Like there's nothing to be too surprised about in regards to that. And I think that's not really the news story, but it's just an upsetting fact of the matter. And like all that's tied together. I covered all that stuff today on the site with, the Florida Police Department and that whole, like what Robert mentioned with the Super PAC. It's just crazy, man. It's a crazy, unfortunate day. And it's like seeing those guys like Drake Maverick spill his soul out on social media like that. just tough to see, man. And it's like, but the silver lining to all this, I feel, is all those guys are super talented, and the majority, everybody that got cut for the most part, were super underutilized under the brand. And
or they just didn't have anything going on. You know, I mean, the thing is, this is any wrestling promotion. There's going to be guys that aren't featured, that don't catch on, that aren't active. Maybe they're on an injury. This is just the nature of the beast anyway, if this wasn't going on. But under the circumstances under the circumstances outside of it, I know why they're doing this. But I think the way this has been done, it's just really sad. It's really discouraging. There's no positive spin to this. You know, like there's no but the thing that bothers me the most is there were simply so many people let go on a single day. But how do you do it? How do you go about doing this when you decide, all right, this is where we're gonna make a cut. We're gonna make a significant one. Are you gonna do it over a week? Are you gonna drag that out? I mean, like, that's any business. That's managing anything. There's no easy way to do this. There's only this hard, brutal, like, draining way of doing it. And just look at some of the names they released. They released some very prominent guys here too. So guys that had some real success, that maybe have become more background players, but have done some big things in WWE, especially in the last 10 years. The biggest name that trended the longest today on social media, and the hashtag WWE releases was trending worldwide at one point, was Rusev, former United States champion, a guy who got to have a big WrestleMania match with John Cena. This guy was a huge star and was featured pretty prominently on and off through the majority of his career when he wasn't injured. He's on the shelf. This is a guy who also committed $20,000 to WWE staff and production crews that weren't working at the time. And so he's a pretty well-liked guy in the wrestling world, and pretty well-liked in the WWE locker room, even though he's one of those guys that earned the respect of standing up for himself on social media and stuff like that. He's on the shelf. Kurt Angle, a guy who retired recently, had his final match at WrestleMania last year, then assumed a new role as a backstage producer. He has been released. Heath Slater, many people thought he would kind of be like a lifer, utility, journeyman wrestler. He has been released. Beloved wrestlers, kind of widely liked wrestlers, Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, who won the Raw Tag Team titles last year. They've been released. Sarah Logan, she's the most notable female talent that has been released. I'm surprised by that. There wasn't more of the women were under this scrutiny, but unfortunately, I think it was just a matter of who we're using, who we not using. Eric Young, one fan texting here saying EC3 has also been released. You know, some of these guys, this may be a blessing because now they can get back out there and do some things, but they're entering a market that is closed down. You know, the one thing you can say about WWE, if you're a wrestler right now, if you were under contract with them, you knew you were going to get the ability to perform at some point, no matter how long this thing goes on. They were going to use you in some way, whether it's in a match or promos or something. Other prominent cuts, there were some to NXT, not nearly as deep, but the biggest name drop from there had to be Lio Rush. He recently held the NXT Cruiserweight Championship, had some pretty prominent matches when the show moved to USA Network, and had a run on Monday Night Raw as Bobby Lashley's manager, and got some real heat and some success. Had some backstage shenanigans where he made some people angry, and they gave him the hey, can't have the boo-boo face, put him down on the bench. But I mean, you're the guy who really got himself back in shape and got him, whether you want to say that mentally or physically, and did some really great things in the last few months in WWE. But we hadn't seen much of them. There's no good way to spin this. You know, another name, people texting here, Matt Petzold saying Gallows and Anderson have to rejoin the Elite. Now, we'll get into that at the end of the show, by the way. That'll be our final segment where we talk about what happens here. But look at Gallows and Anderson. You brought them up. They just signed huge deals last year. The reported number that they got was really, really big. I mean, you were spending, over $1 million on both these guys annually over the course of the next 5 years, and you had a commitment to them. If you're doing that with guys that are north of 36, north of their mid-30s, and you sign them to 5 years deals, that's a career deal. It's a big, sad day, and I'm surprised that this is when WWE wanted to do it after the news yesterday. They're in a tough position. I mean, you look at the losses that the entertainment world has in general. I mean, I remember Hollywood is looking at maybe a $20 billion loss this year, even though everyone's talking about, everyone's streaming everything. Movie theaters are closed. You know what I mean? Like, there's no live event revenue. I don't know how you could have sustained WWE as we know it in 9 months if we're still in this position. So if these cuts didn't come now, when were they going to come? How severe were they going to be? We also look at the releases backstage. You're losing a lot of minds there backstage. A lot of people that contribute a lot of different things. We know some writers have been let go. We only know one has publicly stated, and that is Andrea Lissenberger. She's only been with the company since December. She has worked on several different TV shows across basic cable, but noted that she had a big hand in the Otis and Mandy storyline, which was a big storyline. She was involved with that since December, and that's been a big part of WWE having good ratings. So, I mean, they're releasing some people that I would say showed success recently that they had to let go. So there's some bad moves here. The producers are the biggest ones. You have Kurt Angle, who's producing. Lance Storm was let go. Fit Finlay. Billy Kidman, who's been in a production role for WWE for over 15 years
Forever.
now. Yeah, for a long time. Mike Chioda, a referee. You see him in the ring all the time. He's been with the company for nearly 30 years. He's been let go. So this is a sad day. Now, some of those producers, we're told, are furloughed. It's not clear who's been furloughed and who's been flat out released. So in terms of producers, we don't know how severe that is. And some people don't know what a furlough is. I would say that's not a super common term. I'm not talking down anyone. I'm talking people and maybe the younger college kids who've heard lay off. They know lay off, but what's a furlough? Furlough is like a temporary unpaid leave, basically. And a lot of companies are doing this to try and write off a quarter of business. And how long that furlough could be is unclear. Most of that's not publicly known. And they won't publicly say it. So some of those talents, like specifically some of those producers, could be back in the company at some point. One of the more notable ones was Mike Rotunda, known to many fans as IRS. He's been in that role for over 2 decades now. He was released, and he appeared this morning on The Bump, on WWE's network show. So
it's tax day, after all, gentlemen.
It was tax day. So you got to have IRS on if it's tax day. Technically, it's tax day. Even though tax day is going to be in like July or whatever, right? Taxes today?
Can we call? You know, the
I
thing
hope not,
is, let's not mince words here. Vince McMahon waited damn near 30 years to release this man on tax day, just to make the joke that he wrote him off. Okay, like. Money. It's shitty for Bray Wyatt. That's his dad. You know, I'm sure he can't be thrilled. You know, Fit Finlay has an open invitation to join the Bullet Club in Japan, much to the surprise of his son David. Gallows and Anderson was a shocker. They were in the main event of night 1 of WrestleMania 36. So if that's not permeating your mind, these are 2 dudes that were in the main event of WrestleMania. Deonna Purrazzo, shocking. She was just brought in for the recent tapings to be Nia Jax's opponent. No Way Jose just fought on Raw. I can't understate how crappy this is. But, I think at the end of the day, gentlemen, we need to just let this play out because the great Vince McMahon is advising Donald John Trump in reopening the country. And I mean, I guess, you got to lay off some No Way Jose's. You can't have that when you're trying to reopen the United States of America. So clearly...
Oh, Robert, you got the gloves off tonight, don't you? You got the gloves off tonight.
We just gotta let this go because, my God, I mean, that's gonna. Sean Hannity's ratings are gonna go through the roof. No Way Jose just got released.
It's a pretty sad state of affairs here.
Logan was in the main event of the Chamber pay-per-view. That was just 5 weeks ago. She was in the main event of the pay-per-view.
The influence too. You just even on social media see the reaction of guys like the influence that Fit Finlay had on the women's division and
huge.
Huge. The respect that even Lance Storm has gotten even that short time that he's been back, as an agent and things like that. And you think about Mike Chioda and he's been there since 1989. It's crazy. I haven't been a wrestling fan that long.
I haven't been alive that long.
So it's just wild and unfortunate to think about. It's like everybody on any level was pretty much affected today with those cuts, and there's not a good way to shake it in a lot of ways. It's just like everybody's going into this unknown of what's happening, when are people getting back to work, and this is just a sour taste in the mouth of wrestling fans in the wrestling industry today.
And obviously, there's a lot of people. It was a huge story. This is going to be a wrestling story that we pay attention to for a long time, because this isn't just like one or two people released. This could be a whole brand of wrestlers, if they wanted to look at it that way. And what's to say we don't get more of these?
Well, I think we are. Yeah, I think we are.
More of them.
Yeah.
There was some concern today that more wrestlers would be announced. And now WWE they've been announcing these on their website officially, and that's kind of been the main source. There was some fear that maybe Schinsky Nakamura, who was featured in the main event this past Friday on SmackDown, huge star from New Japan Pro Wrestling, was featured prominently in WWE in multiple levels of the card, that he would be released. Though he has not said that, some fans took it as telling that he simply put up a prayer sign emoji on Twitter. This is one of those days where fans are just losing their mind at everyone's social media as to what it could say. Earlier tonight, Robert, right before you and I went live, we looked at a situation with Rey Mysterio and how he was listed on the alumni section on the mobile online phone version of WWE.com, but not on WWE.com. So would Rey Mysterio, a huge acquisition from WWE to get him back in the fold, would he be released? And he was just featured on Monday Night Raw saying he was going to have a match coming up this past Monday. So there's some speculation in terms of who's going to be released next. I would hope, and I think you guys will agree with me on this, I would hope whatever toilet liquor is out there, whatever scumsucker on the internet is saying, oh, who should release this guy? I've seen this awful meme, and it's someone going like, hey, like, release him, take out this person, get rid of that guy. I saw some awful independent wrestler in Europe saying, I'm glad that Drake Maverick got released because he didn't work these indie shows back in the day. Karma's a bitch.
Well, that sounded...
Go ahead, Robert.
That sounded like a very personal take. And let's not... I'm sure the guy's probably got real personal beef with Drake Maverick. From our perspective, what a sad day it was for him, who just released a video over the weekend about how he's got the bug again, and he's fired up for this tournament. And then he's going to release another one crying his eyes out because he just got off the phone and he has no job. Thank God, there's guys like Gallows and Anderson. We don't have to worry about their careers. They'll be okay. My guess, Hawkins and Ryder don't have to go very far for a job. But what about somebody like an MJ Jenkins from the Performance Center side of things, who's just getting started? Alexander Jasek, just getting started. What if that career path is just closed for them?
As a talent, I can't help but think of when Drake Maverick was on the bump a couple weeks ago or something like that, and he really expressed like the drive and the dedication that he put into his career, and how he did not fault anybody but himself for whatever shortcomings may have happened for him. And like him taking onus of that, I think really exemplified the attitude that a lot of younger talent and current talent too that might get discouraged need to kind of focus on in going into these certain aspects of their career of, what it is. I think he exemplified a very optimistic yet driven kind of attitude that I hope a lot of these talents will take to heart and utilize. I know it's really tough to do it like just in the moment of right now because, and you think about it with these guys, they get cut and everybody's like, oh, they're getting paid by WWE. It's a good contract of money. There's so many other people but you look at it from their perspective. This is something that they've been wanting to do for their entire careers. This is something they've been driven to do for a long time, and to get that kind of taken away out of nowhere, it's going to suck no matter what level of status or amount of money you get paid. If you care about your job and you love what you do, it's going to hurt. And so I think a lot of that needs to come into factor when somebody's just easy to throw away, like, oh, these guys are getting paid a crap ton of money. What's it matter, and all that stuff. So
and
that's something to think about.
You've got dreams to think about. You've got families to think about, even if, let's say, it wasn't their dream. Let's say, for Alexander Jacek, this wasn't his dream, but maybe he's feeding a family. You don't know. This sucks. But I'm not going to let this go, Kev. This came 48 hours after being deemed essential. How essential can you be when you're laying off this many guys at a time? People who are on your show. If this was just like, okay, we're going to release the B team who haven't been on, and we're going to release this performance center guy, that's fine. But how many people are they releasing that have been utility players at the least on their programming?
Yeah.
This is absolutely insane.
It's crazy.
There's nothing nice you can say about it. And everyone's saying, "Oh, why I've seen some people say, "Why aren't you going after him? Why aren't you going after him?"
No. There's nothing. Who are we going to go?
It's not.
Who are we going to go after?
Who are we going to go after? Like, what is it going to do?
I feel there can be plenty to go after, but I don't feel like today's ultimately.
No.
It's just not everybody. I think everybody's just feeling the effects of people getting cut, and just the fact that so many of these guys have lost their jobs, and it's just a crappy time for the world right now. Mm-hmm. And this on top of it, as a wrestling fan or somebody that's interested in the genre, it's a lot to take in. And I'm ready to criticize a lot of aspects of what the company's done and all that stuff. Sure. But again, it's just not I don't know. It's is now the right time to do it? I feel there'll be plenty of platforms to speak upon this, later on.
And that's like, it's hard to speculate on whether or not this is the right time to do it, because we don't know what the next thing is going to be. Like this is such a fluid situation. I will say this, I wonder if they were told they couldn't do their shows in Florida, if these cuts would have been deeper, if the furloughs would have been longer. I wonder if we'd want to be speculative, like how bad these cuts are. How bad would these cuts be if they just flat out couldn't run anything? If they just had to go, if they switch, everyone said, "Oh, why are you even doing WrestleMania? Why are you even doing shows? Why don't you stop? Why don't you stop doing shows?" Right? Everyone said yesterday, "Why are they even an essential business?" If they stop completely, I think a lot more people would lose their jobs.
Yeah, you know what? And I'll give you that, and that sucks. However, I think from a brand aspect, from a brand that wants to obsess over the terminology of smiles on faces, how much easier is it to paint yourself in a sympathetic light if you at least say, "Hey guys, we're making a decision for the safety of our talent to not run shows. Also, these cuts have to happen." No, but you're going to run shows on top of laying off all these people. And you've got people who, don't know the full story and want to make assumptions like, "Oh, well, they just let go of a married couple that has 2 young children in Mike and Maria Kanellis." But you know what? I'm sure that they wouldn't viciously let them go, sure, but they still did it. They still bothered to say, "Hey, you don't have a job right now. You don't have a steady income right now." That sucks. There is no spinning this to where it's like, "Oh man, WWE, they're doing the right thing." This is going to be a hard thing to overcome. This is going to be something where one day when the world is back to normal, you've got to explain how your callous business practices make you a desirable company for anybody.
Yeah.
Here's the thing too, Robert. I feel that a lot of the times that necessarily doesn't happen with WWE because it's pro wrestling and mainstream media. They'll pick up on it for a week or a couple weeks. You look at John Oliver. You look at even this little incident here with Rachel Maddow that happened yesterday. I feel a lot of this stuff does give a little bit of an impact for a while, but then it fizzles out because guess what? Hey, it's just pro wrestling. I feel like that a lot of the blowback needs to come and hit Vince McMahon hard at some point, but
but it never does because it's just pro wrestling, and you only want to talk about it when you can talk about the Chris Benoit murders and Jimmy Snuka killed his girlfriend. That's the only time anybody wants to talk about pro wrestling, but you're not going to talk about the fact that all these guys put their lives on the line during this virus, and now they can just go home without jobs. It's shitty and it's through and through, but this is the modern reality, and I've seen this take a lot. Oh, unionize now. That's not happening, folks.
No,
It's not. And I don't say that to say that I think that is a bad idea. I say that as saying I'm a realist and it's not going to happen.
No. I don't think anyone's getting signed if they say they want to unionize in any of the companies. And I'll say that in any of the companies, in any of the televised companies. I can tell you that from talking to people in the industry, but I just got to keep my mouth shut on that because I might say too much. We've gotten multiple questions about this, and I know we've already been going about 25 minutes. We will talk about NXT and AEW, but let's be serious. This is the real story of the day. I did have a question from Joe Regilio who texted in. He said, do the wrestlers that have been released, do they get paid for whatever is left on their contract? We don't know the terms of every single release. Okay, and it has changed over time, and it could be different individual to individual, depending on what their payout is or what is commonly referred to as their quote-unquote downside guarantee. That is the guaranteed money on their annual contract that they get as salaried independent contractors. All right, and then there's other money they get based on how many events they're doing, what type of event they did. The Saudi Arabian shows are known for having big payouts, merchandise, additional endorsements. There's many, many different things. From what we know, the wrestlers, if they get the usual common 90-day release, they get paid out their downside guarantee within that time. But mind you, that isn't me reporting it. That's just no knowledge we've known from other wrestlers who've been in WWE or have been contracted performers for them and have been released and come out. Now, mind you, that was the knowledge about 10 years ago. This is a much larger company with a much larger operating revenue system to it. So it could be completely different now. But that is what we know, and that's the closest answer I have to what we could have with that question.
We shouldn't even worry for long. 45, President Hall of Famer there was like, I want to get sports back in stadiums. I want to be open before even the end of the month. So maybe, by May 1st, we'll all be good, and Gallows and Anderson will be in AEW, and so Hawkins and Ryder, and all will be right with the world. We got nothing to worry about, right?
I don't know what to say, man. Some people are just heels wearing a suit and a tie, man, and they're just in the real life world. That is, I'll leave it at that, dude. I'll leave it at that. Because I just want to get to as many questions as you guys have here. Michael Woodson saying it could all be a temporary layoff. Like we were saying, some of the producers specifically, not the talents on TV, they've been furloughed. We don't know the terms of the furlough. Furlough sometimes could be a month. They could be 90 days. They could be undetermined, meaning you're not getting paid, but we still have you under contract and we have you under hold, and you won't get paid until we bring you back, yada, yada, yada. Or there is some payment on that. Another thing to note is in this rollout today is WWE announced cuts to the board in terms of their pay. None of those people were let go, but they did take pay cuts. How severe those pay cuts are, we don't know. All right, so this is what we have here. And it's a depressing story, and we will touch on it a little bit more within the show. And I want to get into the positive stuff of where are these wrestlers going to be? Where else are we going to see this big wealth of talent that is out there? What possibilities do they have with the very wild circumstances we have with COVID-19? You're all aware of them. I don't have to drill that in your head. You get that every 5 seconds, right? But we'll talk about where Rusev could end up in 90 days. We'll talk about it.
Poor guy just headlined the last Raw of the new year, breaking up a wedding. That was such a big story, right? He's essential. Gone. What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
We
didn't do it. Robert, you and I didn't do it.
Oh, well, not saying we did. I'm saying we as just a community. What are we doing?
The response to it has been wild one, and there's some of these stories that are kind of popping out from this. You brought up Drake Maverick, his situation where he said, I want to get back in the ring. I've been a talking piece on 205 Live. He was managing AOP. And then we learned he puts out this video where he says, like, very, very tearfully, this sucks. This is really awful. This is all I've ever wanted to do. I've been with WWE for a few years now, and now I'm finally actually going to be able to get in the ring and wrestle. And he's had a couple of matches, and he's done the 6-man tag thing, and he's had a singles match on 205 Live sporadically. But really, he's not an in-ring performer. He's a wrestling manager and talking head who's always wanted to do it in WWE full-time. And then he's going to get this opportunity in this upcoming interim cruiserweight tournament. He's going to be featured in it, but he got released today. And he says he's going to have 3 matches in the tournament. Now, the problem with that, as we saw today, is NXT was live. And this tournament's going to take place on NXT on Wednesday nights and 205 Live. Now, we know that Raw, SmackDown, and NXT are broadcasting live from Florida, with Raw and SmackDown being at the Performance Center, and NXT continue to broadcast live once again back at Full Sail University. So the problem then is you have a guy who is released from the company. He has 3 more matches that are going to be on television, but are they going to be live? He's in a tournament for a title. And is he going to win any of these matches? It's a very weird circumstance, very awkward, but maybe this is just me following wrestling all the time. I'm intrigued because I don't think WWE is going to talk about Drake Maverick being released. I don't know what story you're going to tell with him. I don't know
what do you mean? He could win the whole tournament, right? And then they couldn't release him.
Walks away with the title. Yeah.
I mean, it's
but Robert, 2011, the story with CM Punk was 100% legitimate. I can tell you that from being in Chicago and talking to certain people. He went into a main event on a pay-per-view, not signing a contract, and they booked him to win the world title. So I mean, think about that. There is a precedent that has been set here before. If they were booking this cruiserweight tournament, and the idea was, they have a lot of hot hands in this tournament. The situation is Jordan Devlin is your NXT Cruiserweight champion. He's stuck in Ireland, and we can't get him into the United States, right? We can't have him fly over here. So we're going to bring up a bunch of hot hands that we have that we're not letting go, that we want to develop something with. They had Shane Strickland. They had Tozawa tonight. They had a banger match. They're going to have El Helio Fantasma, one of the biggest Latino stars they've signed in years. He's in the tournament. He was featured in a vignette tonight. But now you have Drake Maverick, and WWE pays attention when people talk online, and things sometimes get played into the story. Does WWE at any point mention that Drake Maverick is no longer under contract with WWE, but he was already announced and advertised for this tournament? So do they mention it at all? Does it get played up at all? Does Drake Maverick wink at the camera and blow you a kiss goodbye on his final match?
Sure.
Dom, what do you think here? It's a very interesting situation that I think people are kind of sleeping on right now.
They've set precedents for both of those ideas. I think they've shocked us. I know with John Moxley before he was about to leave, saying, "Hey, Dean Ambrose is going to be gone from the company," and here he is. He ended up leaving. And then there's other times where they don't mention the elephant in the room. Plenty of times they do that. Yeah. They don't mention anything. So I could obviously see it happening either way. If I had to venture a guess, I would say yes. With these current times and how accessible everybody is, I feel that they will mention it in some form or fashion.
I think they will too. And I think WWE, as much as people say, they're a heartless company or something like that, I think he's a guy who had a really good standing in the company, even though he wasn't featured in the way he would like. This is a guy who they brought him in and literally said, here's a brand new TV show we're going to put on the network, and you're going to be the guy who talks on it every single week. That's when you're writing a show, that's a pivotal piece. Fans can overlook that just because it's on TV every week, whatever. Okay, yeah, but once you take Jim Ross off Monday Night Raw, people are like, well, where's Jim Ross? Where's the thing I'm used to? Yeah. So I think with Drake Maverick, there was that, especially online, this guy had a following too. And he was liked in that regard. And also had a pretty good reputation. I hope honestly, I just feel for everyone involved. I know at the end of the final segment of the show, we will get to it. We will talk about where we see these people going. We'll have the All Elite discussion, okay? We'll have that. But let's talk about tonight's All Elite Wrestling Dynamite. NXT was a pretty prominent episode. They had 2 big debuts. But tell me, fellas, I didn't get to see any of the Dynamite explode over on TNT. What are the big takeaways tonight?
Big takeaways from Dynamite. Chris Jericho needs to stay on commentary. I think Tony Schiavone is making a strong case for himself as the voice of All Elite Wrestling, and Chris Jericho can easily transition into a color role if he ever wanted to. Sammy Guevara developing a more hard-hitting, less flashy offense. That was the story of the night. You had Shawn Spears, who's gaining momentum back. You had Britt Baker gaining momentum back. A lot of short burst matches. Obviously, the big one was Jake Hager and Jon Moxley in Empty Arena for the title. That was taped on the first Empty Arena show back when they were still at the Daily's place and JR was on the call. I'm seeing a lot of takes saying that it was a good match. I was personally heavily underwhelmed. Perhaps that's just because for me there was zero doubt in my mind that Moxley was losing this thing. I think JR must have loved it. It was very like, oh, men are grappling here, Kevin. Men are going to be men, and they're going to punch each other, and they're going to grapple. And this is a real sport. And nobody's worried about their push because these are men, and they're going to fight, Kevin. And I imagine Jim Ross had a hell of a time calling the match. I thought it was boring as crap, and I was not entertained. And Moxley,
Robert, nothing is making you happy today.
Let's be real. Today sucked. I forgive me for not being like, yeah, wrestling is great. That's not the mood I'm in. But guys, what happened over on NXT? I didn't get to see any of that.
NXT had a pretty solid episode. 2 hours of in-ring action. Very little talking segments, though the one we got was pretty exciting. It set up a big match here. We opened with Finn Balor versus Imperium. Now, Finn Balor is chasing Walter for the NXT UK Championship, and that was supposed to be the match we were going to get at the end of April. That match is not happening in Dublin, Ireland at the O2 Arena. That has been postponed to October, I believe, sometime in the fall. If I'm wrong on that, don't quote me.
You're right.
You're right. Thank you. So Balor really had a strong match with Fabian Eichner. Fabian Eichner lost this match, but when you have a banger match and you get to show off some things, Eichner showed off some near Cesaro strength. He did a move where he pulled Finn Balor up by one arm, like a powerbomb position, and threw him over his head like a bale of hay. It was very, very impressive. And then minutes later was doing a spring leg moonsault. But you can't beat the Prince, all right? You cannot beat the Prince. Prince Balor winning this with the coup de grace in the 1916. I think they're going to set him up going through all the studs they have in Imperium to get to Walter. Something they haven't done on NXT UK is feed like the Imperium group, this kind of, this we're better than everyone else. People say that's a little bit controversial. But they haven't fed Imperium's, goon squad that Walter puts in front of himself, in front of people. And then on top of it, Walter's the ultimate game boss. So they haven't done that yet. And Balor being in that position is odd since he was such a heel. But you got to admit the attitude with Finn Balor has been a lot more mean and gritty. So him going heel to babyface while he's just so mad that no one respects him is pretty cool. And someone that doesn't respect him is the Velveteen Dream. And they faced off, and Dream said, I'm the top guy here, and I'm going to take the title. I'm going to do all these things. But Balor cuts him off and says, you think you have a date with the championship, but next week you have a date with me. A match we haven't seen before, Velveteen Dream versus Finn Balor on paper. That's tune-in television. That's two huge personalities that WWE has. We haven't seen Dream actively in the ring for quite some time. I know he had a big send-off segment, at least the send-off to Full Sail with a live crowd. You have to have that. It seems like he had his eyes set on Adam Cole in the championship, but the circumstances are so different. So why not, under these very fluid circumstances, give people on paper a pay-per-view level match? Balor versus Dream next week will be really cool. Pete Dunne couldn't get out of the UK, so who's Matt Riddle's tag team partner going to be? Who's it going to be, guys? Who did you think it was going to be?
I thought it would be like a Ciampa or like a Keith Lee, one of the established, players.
Dom.
I'd like to think Matt Riddle can compliment anybody. But who they did choose, I'm very excited about, Kev. So go ahead.
They went with Timothy Thatcher. Timothy Thatcher is one of the big acquisitions that WWE announced in January. And he was a big name, a big guy with a very, very legitimate fighting background. And it's been breaking out big on the independent circuit over the course of the last 2 years. He came in looking like the love child of Luthez and Bob Backlund. He looked like every old school badass, the guy that was like your dad's friend on his softball team, that when your dad got into a fight at a bar, if Timothy Thatcher was there, he was going to kick somebody's ass. He looks like an old school ass kicker. He came into this match, and now he's one half of the NXT Tag Team Champions. It's a big way to debut for somebody. He didn't get to talk too much, but this guy looked strong. Like, he had some really cool highlighting moves. They did a spot where him and Matt Riddle did double gut wrench suplexes, which I'm just a sucker for a gut wrench suplex. Aren't you a fan of any of those moves that don't end anyone? And like, you just like them. You just like those moves, like a backbreaker or something like that. I loved it. I was a fan of it. I thought he looked great. The big story out of the night is obviously Timothy Thatcher is a big debut, but the biggest debut of the night was Killer Kross. We finally got to see Killer Kross on camera, on screen. It's been teased for 2 months now. Tick tock, tick tock. The clock has ticked up. We were supposed to get Tommaso Ciampa, one of those. How would you describe it, Robert? These promos that Tommaso would cut, where it's just him talking at the camera.
It's a one camera vignette.
Yeah,
where, he's in a nice background, give him some ambiance, and he's gonna talk to Johnny Gargano, who beat him last week in an empty arena. Candice kicked him in the balls, stood by her man, and Johnny was on tonight's show. But as I understand it, as Ciampa was about to say whatever it is he was going to say to his old friend, he got tossed into oblivion.
Literally, you just saw these giant hands wrap around him from complete darkness. Tommaso leaning over to the camera like this, and boom, he just got gutted out of the shot. The camera falls down. Tools are falling. You hear this guttural fight. Tommaso falls into the camera shot. A big, leathery high heel steps into frame. And then the bald, menacing monster crawls up and says, tick tock. That's how you debut a superstar. That's how you make somebody. That was really, really cool. It really, really paid off. They teased this last week with Killer Kross and Velvet Sky. I almost said it there. Scarlett being in no, it's the hair. I get the platinum blonde hair throws me off there. But Scarlett will be really, really mad at me. She knows me, and I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm in trouble. All right, so they're there. They're there. If you're smart, you know who they are. They definitely done a bunch of different things online to give you those Easter eggs. They did those Easter eggs on the TV show. They did it last week. Now they're here. Killer Kross, Tommaso Ciampa. If this is how you get Ciampa away from Gargano, this is a big way to do it.
Absolutely. And, I mean, like, the Killer Kross, I mean, it's just, he's on another level. Like, I feel he's the type of talent that you could immediately put in the main event level of WWE, and he would flourish like it. So having him go up against debut like that in the form of, like, suplexing Tommaso Ciampa into oblivion is just, it's perfect to set up his character to go on this ride and see where this leads with him and Scarlett together. It's a nice combo. It's a edgy combo that we don't get too often in wrestling, and so it's going to be very exciting to see Killer Kross on this platform and be able to showcase himself. I'm excited, man. I'm very excited.
Also, I want to be clear. I said Velvet Sky by mistake. It was the platinum blonde that thing that threw me off. I meant Scarlett is there. Sorry. Yeah.
So he's got a new name. He's going to be known as Carry On Kross. That's Karrion Kross. Carry On Kross.
Okay.
Really?
No, I thought of the Jeff Jarrett thing when you started to spell it out. What do you think? Carry On Kross is not the worst name. I don't think it's the worst name.
It takes a lot of the sting out of him being
Yeah, people will get over that. You remember the initial reaction to Bryan Danielson? Bryan Danielson coming to WWE 10 years ago, and the noise that came out of every smark when they said Daniel Bryan, like, people literally had their nasal cavity like scrunch as they said it. People will be over it now. Everyone chants Daniel Bryan. If Carry On Kross is over, people will be chanting that name soon enough. It's not the worst alteration. It's adjacent.
I kind of like it. I like it.
Yeah, it's not the worst name that they've done either. They've had much worse name changes.
I would have kind of been surprised too if they did keep Killer, actually, just because
Yeah, it's a little, especially if they want to keep the TV PG-14 type thing. It's hard. That's a hardcore horror movie type character name. So to have that and keep moving on would have been harder to do. I wonder how much of a smoke show Scarlett gets to be, since that was something she liked to do in Impact Wrestling. What did you say there, Robert? Your connection was a little light there, bud. Robert's cutting out here. Robert, you want to reconnect with me if you can hear me. Reconnect with me if you can. So moving along here, Dominic. Pretty strong episodes overall of AEW and NXT. I haven't seen AEW yet, but do you agree with Robert that maybe this big billing of a huge fight, they were building it up almost like it was a pay-per-view, did Moxley and Hager underdeliver for you?
Honestly, I need to rewatch it. I saw it, I had it in the corner of my eye watching it, but I wasn't fully invested into it. But the build that they did throughout the night was awesome. Like they had guys like Ariel Helwani come in. They had Mike Goldberg come in. They had oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? The comedian, Funches, Ron Funches. They had Funches weigh in. They had Taz assess and break down and analyze Jake Hager's submission tactics and stuff like that. They really build it up to a big fight. So I really praise them for that. And I also feel, going with that mindset of having this empty arena and them going at it, what I was catching was the silence and stuff like that. So I want to watch it again. I cannot legitimately criticize or praise it at this moment in time, but I will say the build to it was very, very well done. So
good point there too.
I just want to say I really feel like the build to it was nice. It was. But I think that this is them in their minds being like, oh, we're so sports centric, bro. We are such a sport.
Bro?
We got Mike Goldberg talking about our championship match.
Bro?
I see you getting very close to your webcam there, Kevin. Very concerned.
Bro?
But I feel like this is them thinking that this came across a lot more legit than maybe it did. I'll be a little mean here. It's still Dean Ambrose versus Jack Swagger. Don't act like...
But Robert, they're not putting smiles on people's faces anymore.
You're right, because it bored the crap out of me. This did not put a smile on my face.
Winking at you, Dom. I'm winking at you.
This did not put a smile on my face. This bored me to tears.
Oh, tears? Tears have been shed today, Robert.
But again, I feel like that may be because there was not a doubt in my mind that Moxley's walking out with the belt. Maybe if this is a different scenario, I'd feel different about this match. I like the presentation. I think Hager is an animal. I think Moxley is the best he's ever been. But this presentation did not click for me.
I can, like I said, I can definitely get that vibe from it, but I definitely want to watch it more thoroughly tomorrow and get a better feel for it before I really assess it, because I feel like you go in those expectations of knowing this is going to be an empty arena match and dealing with that silence, but you still have JR on commentary, you still have John Moxley, you still have Jake Hager, who they've both built up throughout the evening to this big fight. I don't want to say either way on how I feel about it, because I feel I can't really get a good gauge of it at the moment. But from what it seemed, the build was awesome. So,
all right, so it delivered for you, Dom, and maybe it didn't deliver for everyone. We'll find out. This is also an interesting circumstance because last week's ratings were interesting. NXT went up. AEW went down. They basically tied, even though technically you could say it was NXT. But in the ratings last week, those were just the Thursday overnight ratings. We didn't get the 3-day ratings, by the way. We have not gotten the 3-day weekend ratings for those. So those are just initial numbers, overnight numbers. Could NXT be kind of closing the gap here with some long-term storylines? We know we're getting a tournament from them. We know we're getting a tournament from AEW. And we also know that AEW, whatever they have, is taped. They have it locked in through the pay-per-view, through Double or Nothing. We have some news about that in a minute. Is NXT in a position to kind of catch up with them in terms of that ratings war? Because I know it's very sad to say that now with all the different releases today. There's some pieces that NXT put together that, to me, are really exciting. And if Jon Moxley went through Hager, who's the next guy? You just built up this match. He got through him. What's next? I didn't get a sense of enough of the next outside of the tournament for AEW, which I can say is really, really cool. I got to see some clips of Lance Archer and Colt Cabana. Love me some Colt Cabana, but Archer's a monster, and they're making you think he's a monster, and they're treating him like a monster, and it's hard to build up a monster. It's really easy to mess up a monster. We have some monsters that are kicking ass right now. Dexter Lumis on NXT is a creepy, creepy man. He said nothing, and I'm terrified. I have blue eyes, and it scares me because Dexter Lumis also has blue eyes. But you also have Killer Kross, but then, Archer's a big monster for them. But in terms of the title pictures, it seems like everything's kind of mixed up. They have plenty of time to get to Double or Nothing, which leads me to this. Do we have a situation where, AEW can't change week to week? They're locked into what we got. We know they're going to have something, and NXT could be a little bit more reactive week to week. Could that be a benefit to them if they're taping their shows live?
I don't think it matters until we get back to normal wrestling where, we're back in arenas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can take that too.
And, they can always change a little bit of course too, considering wrestling's essential now in Florida. So, and Jacksonville happens to be in Florida. So, if they really want to tweak some stuff, they really can. So it's just a matter of touch and go, how they feel about the vibe of it all, and where they want the direction to happen. Because Kev, I feel you make a valid point with Moxley. Like, what's next for him? After this, I'm sure they have something planned, but as a viewer, it's not super duper clear where that might be. So.
Mm-hmm. But I also think that AEW needs to be in this position to give it pay-per-view payoffs on television. They have to give you these big matches, and they built this up. So but the thing is, if you got to that match, and it didn't feel like it was as big as everything else you've done. If this is a step down, and AEW's already set this huge, huge standard every single week, like I said, you set a certain standard, you have to sustain it. And the second you drop off, wrestling fans are going to let you know about it. So we'll see definitely as things develop here. Some sad AEW news just with everything going on. We knew MGM was not going to have any live events in Las Vegas. That was the marketed site for the upcoming Double or Nothing, where they held it last summer, which was a huge, huge event for them there. Their debut pay-per-view event. Here we are, though. They're not going to be there. They will have a pay-per-view event on Saturday night, May 23rd, and they have announced that they will be back in Las Vegas in May of 2021, May 29th. They will be there. So next year, they will have a Double or Nothing. We will have one on the 23rd. Where it will broadcast from, we don't know just yet, but AEW is committed to having it available on pay-per-view, BR Live, and internationally on FIGHT.tv. Where do you think things land here for Double or Nothing? We don't know what's going on with Jon Moxley. We don't know the situation with Hangman Page and the Elite. We know we're going to get a pre-filmed Jericho-Matt Hardy match, but what do you think happens in May with Double or Nothing? Because that's on pay-per-view, and you're going to ask fans in this quarantine time to pay X amount of dollars for a pay-per-view with no fans at it. That's a different challenge. What do you think, Dom? What do we get at Double or Nothing?
I feel like, obviously you'll get to the TNT Championship match, and maybe that will be the main focus in regards to a title defense or a title on the line. And Moxley will team up with somebody instead, and there we'll see a different aspect of that going on. I think maybe that's going to be the big sticking point is the TNT Championship and where that develops. I feel that in regards to maybe we'll get some more developments in regards to Nick Jackson and the Young Bucks and kind of getting them back in a little bit of the fold, perhaps. All this stuff might be relatively touch and go, but I feel they have a lot that they can maybe kind of hook fans still with as Double or Nothing it gets closer here. And that's whoa, that's almost like a month away. So
not that far. They got to get them. No, that's about 5 weeks from now. So
yeah,
you're going to get a new champion crowned at that event. That's a big selling point for them. And it looks like if the major talking point is we get Cody versus Lance Archer in the finals, and that's what we get. And Archer has said this is all he wants. He doesn't want the title. He wants Cody. I don't know what service that does for the title itself. If you have a guy who says, I don't even care about the title, I want just Cody, that's a whole other situation here. So let's get into it here. We have 24 superstars that have been released by WWE. They are out there. If this was a couple of months ago, that would have been an awful, awful day. But now you have these talents. They're going to go out on the market, and we don't know if live wrestling in any form whatsoever, or even streaming independent wrestling, is going to be accessible for people to film. I know for a fact Freelance Wrestling here in Chicago wanted to do a show. They wanted to do one along the lines of in your warehouse, in your house. They wanted to do that, and they weren't allowed to do it because of the stay-at-home order. They couldn't get away with it here in Illinois. Different story. But now you have those talents. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to end up? And are they going to go all elite? We have several big names. Immediately, you had the Elite today. You had the Elite today saying, posting pictures of themselves with Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. Long history there with the Bullet Club. Is it a foregone conclusion that Gallows and Anderson are in AEW before the end of the year?
I think so. I don't think it's like so. Super foregone. Yeah, I don't think it's super foregone, but I feel it's a very, very good odds that happens. I mean, they got that bigger presence, and Gallows and Anderson together. You can put them as a team. You can kind of separate them and make them their own package in each way. I feel they'll be good for All Elite Wrestling. I feel that's where they'll go.
Yeah, and I don't want to see them in. I'd rather them in the States. Do you know what I mean? I would prefer them in the States. I'd prefer them to stay within All Elite Wrestling.
But you got to admit those guys made their names and really became huge names in Japan. But Japan they're in the worst state of all the big companies right now. They've been on complete lockdown, no events, no live events of any kind, filmed or in front of fans or not. With New Japan World, they have been putting out some content on there with just wrestlers doing interviews and hosting shows and chatting. But, they are an in-ring driven band. And they're in a very, very tough position here. They've had to cancel Wrestling.Taku, the New Japan Cup. But if you could come out of this and say, hey, we're bringing back some wrestlers you like and maybe some new ones that you don't like, that you haven't seen before, I think some of those talents that released will end up in New Japan. I will say that. I don't know what there's some cruiserweights there that could do some different things. You have some different talent that can become available in different ways here. Let's talk about this, though. Rusev is the biggest name, I think, in terms of single stars that was released here. Where does he end up? Does he continue to wrestle? He's a guy who's done a little bit of TV, maybe some small acting things. What's the future for him?
Robert, you want to go take that one first?
See, of all the names, he's the hardest to pinpoint because he doesn't have this overwhelming elite affiliation or a major league affiliation or Ring of Honor. We know him as Rusev, and beyond his time as Rusev, the only thing I know is he was trained by Rikishi. And that's all I know. Mm-hmm. So where does he end up? I don't know.
You can put him in the position of like a monster in Japan, or you can definitely. I mean, I think he would eventually fit right into the All Elite fold. But yeah, I feel for him to kind of spread his wings and fly out, so to speak. Maybe going to Japan might be the most beneficial to him for the time being. Just to build, you look at what like AJ Styles did, and I know they're very different in their styles of wrestling, but you see him when he went to New Japan and how much that even highlighted his star power and built him up even more ready for WWE to go when he went to WWE at that point in time. So him going out and flexing his muscles in Japan might be the way to go for Rusev.
Yeah. What do you think about MLW?
Hey. Come on, Dominic. To be clear, Dominic produces content officially for MLW.com. Sure. I need to put it out there. I need to have discretion. But screw discretion. Let's pull down the cape here. You've been on the phone with Court Bauer today? You've been scooping out availability?
That I have not. But I'm always an advocate for a talent to go to MLW and show what they got there because it's a great stopping point for any wrestler to go to because the MLW really embraces the fusion aspect of all the different styles going into.
I see what you did there.
How about it?
Hey.
I didn't have to do it. They already did it for me. Like Fusion that's why it's named that. Is all this DeSalle. So I don't have to.
By the way, Dom, when this is over, tell Court Dower I am available.
Oh, we're all getting jobs now. All right. If you got a scoop, Robert, oh man, come on. People are mentioning this. Stephen Chambers texting in. Eric Rowan, one of the names released today. Could we see him reunite with Brody Lee in AEW? He's a big man. He's out there. They were doing some things with him near the end. Just recently, he had his animatronic spider out there, right?
They have a symbiotic relationship, these two. I would not have guessed in a million years that the door would open in such a way, but I think Rowan is more than prepared to be the kind of Rain Man-like right-hand man to Brody Lee in the Dark Order.
Mm-hmm. I think it's worth saying we're talking about, where these talents could end up. Some of them will land safelier than others. Epico and Primo have not been featured on WWE television in over a year, right? We haven't
2 years.
2 years. But they've been under contract, so they were getting downside guarantees. Now, what those could be, I don't know. But they were allowed to be able to perform in Puerto Rico for their families who have promotions there. So these guys will be active. And now I think you may see them pop up in the Lucha world. They could be a very, very big tag team. I think of the names that could surprise you the most that could come out of this and be a big thing, the Colognes could do that. Epico and Primo could go over to Japan and be huge stars in New Japan. I think they could be huge stars in AEW. I think they would fit in very well. They're still fairly young. You have guys that are north of 35, so they have some really great physical years ahead of them, and they could do some things. Sarah Logan. I will say this. Sarah Logan is one of the bigger cuts here. She has name value, so female wrestling fans are going to follow. They are dedicated. They're following. She has a following online. She was in the Riot Squad. They had a big online fan base, and so she's out there. If the independents were to get going, a lot of the big problems that people had with AEW signing up talent is they said they took a lot of the prominent female headliners in independent wrestling. Kylie Ray's back out there. She's able to do it with Impact and do both. She's on the independent circuit. But Sarah Logan, a big name like that, and if independents were back up before the end of the year, she would pull a pretty penny back out there on the road doing independents across the country. So some of these people, just look at the positives, it could be pretty good here. James Dozel texting in EC3. He was a huge deal in Impact Wrestling. Maybe even a bigger deal in NXT. Then we didn't see much of him once he made it to Raw. Where does he end up? Do we see EC3 in AEW?
I think it's a safe bet that they at least try EC3 on TNT. I feel like the 3-letter stuff writes itself. I think Eric Young, if he's going anywhere, he's going home to Impact.
Eric Young going to Impact would be a great feel-good moment. He was their champion. He was a real good franchise player for them a long time. And I remember when he left, that was a big deal. When he left Impact Wrestling, that was something that kind of hit their locker rooms, considering that he had been there for such a long time. But you say he could go back to Impact Wrestling. I'm looking at the flexibility creatively of all the promotions that have televised content right now. I think the NWA is in a very, very good position.
Yeah,
Billy Corgan and his setup of group tapings. You come, you tape, we get all your angles done in 2 days. You're done. You can go out. You can do your independence. You can go do a TV show. Eric Young is a guy who had a show on the Travel Network. He did a show about fishing. He's a guy who has some feet in the ground. He can do things there. He has some talent there that they would really like. And they're thin on female names. Sarah Logan is a name that could pop up there. They like their big hosses. Eric Rowan showing up at that TV studio in Georgia if they're filming content. He would be a solid name for them as well. Ring of Honor has to be looking at what's going on here. I haven't brought them up yet, but Ring of Honor spent some money in the last year to retain Marty Scurll and have him be their booker. Are you telling me Marty Scurll, who he has a relationship with, let's say her full name again. I've butchered it on the show before.
Deonna Purrazzo.
Deonna Purrazzo, they've had a documented relationship. I would be surprised if you don't see her on Ring of Honor before the end of the year.
Are they still an item? I don't know.
I'm not certain of that. We're speculating on wrestlers, okay? I want to know who knows who and who's booking who, Robert. All right?
I I think it's a fair guess that maybe, because of that, maybe they don't end up in the same place. I think Deanna's a lock for All Elite.
Mhm.
Deanna, they need more women superstars on that brand, first of all, and Deanna's a lock. Now, you could argue Ring of Honor, before all of this, was going to rebrand their women's division, and maybe Deanna's a good fit there. She has a lot of leg room, and I think there's a rumor and speculation that she kind of opted out rather than them saying, hey, you gotta go. She said she worked with them, so maybe she feels there's more room for her to grow on the independent scene.
And you know what? There's more than a few guys that all right, we've decided you're someone we're going to cut. Here are the circumstances we can let you go on. If you make a good release with WWE and they cut you, and this is something I've heard from multiple people in the industry, if you leave WWE on good terms, you always have a pretty good shot if you're healthy and you keep your name out there and you add something new to your act and spots start to open up. You probably have a good shot at coming back. And I would say of these 24 names, bold prediction here, at least 4 or 5 of them are going to end up back in the WWE.
At some point, yes.
Yeah.
I think Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins are...
Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, those are guys who, if we could see them on the independent circuit, they would be selling out every place they could go to. They have a following. They did a really successful event on their own that I attended. They did a live podcast, Survivor Series weekend on their own, and they did really, really well. So there's some players here. Also Heath Slater has kids. Just to remind you, he's got kids. So buy those T-shirts. He's got to buy another stand-up pool for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I love this isn't the end for him.
What? What did you say, Robert?
I've heard that this isn't the end for Heath Slater, so I'm curious as to where he lands on his feet.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Heath Slater, he's got a lot of upswing that we haven't got to see him in his full potential either. You look at I think he would be an awesome fit for somewhere like NWA. I think he would be a really good match for them.
Old Southern red hair wrestler. Come on,
right?
Come on, the rock star. Come on. He would be a home run for him. He's at least an RBI. Summing up everything here tonight, obviously speculating on where these wrestlers could go, and we want to see more of them. We want to see them back in the ring. We want to see all wrestlers back in the ring. Obviously, these are tough times, and there's a lot more people than just professional wrestlers losing their jobs nowadays, or worried about their jobs, or the health of their jobs, or the health of the business. If you're a small business owner too, I love this text here. To wrap up here, I think we could all approve of this. Matt Calloway, there's more than enough wrestlers that were released by WWE to swell the ranks of 3 or 4 promotions. And I completely agree with that. I want to see all these guys and gals do well out there. Robert?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say so. I was going to add real quick. One guy we didn't touch on was Leo Rush. Yeah. He is going... I would imagine he's a lock for All Elite. And he and Joey Janela on the independent scene had some banger matches. Joey Janela's kind of in limbo on AEW. Get his old rival back in there and light it up on a big stage.
He's another one of those guys where I could see him popping off a little bit harder in Japan, even if it's not New Japan or somewhere else. You haven't seen much of him over there. I think he's done maybe 1 or 2 different runs there. But if he went over, I think him as a cruiserweight, a fresh light heavyweight for them, and they go by the light heavyweight title, he would be a player right away in that mixture, and knows how to more frame up that action for camera and do the big arena stuff, learning that in WWE. But yeah, it is a sad, sad day for wrestling, and I know we end the show, try to end it on a positive note, but even though we're reporting sad news, we hope for you. You're in the house, maybe you're pretending to work from home, maybe you've been furloughed, maybe you've been laid off. We hope that our show and everything we have at WrestleZone is a solid escape for you. To say that these are challenging, stressful times, to say that I'm not going to get off and look at the news and not tear up at something today is challenging. And maybe you did that in the last few days, and maybe you're going to do it tomorrow. But we're talking wrestling, and we're trying to give you an escape. If you're listening, you're watching, wherever you are, we hope you're safe. We hope your family and your friends are safe. Keep washing those hands. And somebody, what's the thing when you watch wrestling? It's right there. It's right there. It's right on the tip
Dom, I can't remember.
Down.
I think Kev. I think it's this.
What? What is it?
Enjoy wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. All right, there we go.
That's it.